Sure. Hey, Mike, 1 minute.
Are you back now?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm good. We're leaving it.
John? In a dream.
We need a license for your name.
Good. It was good. It was quiet. Stayed home.
Hey, Mayor.
I'm great. I said, what you want, Chinese instead?
There you go.
Chinese?
Did the same thing.
Did you? To the way? A little cake, about a little tiny cake.
Yeah, that would be good.
Where'd you go?
When you called me, I know it was 5:25.
We didn't go there. We stayed home.
Okay.
Ready?
I was talking to Doug. This one's not.
Mike,
You have fun.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Mayor said we were ready.
Okay, this is the pre-council meeting for the city of Joliet for May 15th, 2017 with Mayor Bob Kirk presiding.
Start with roll call. Mayor Odekirk.
Here.
Councilman Dickinson.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Here.
Councilman Girl.
Here.
Councilman Hug.
Here.
Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Mudrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Quillman.
Here.
Councilman Turk.
Here.
First on the agenda tonight is a presentation regarding the proposed FEMA floodplain maps and revised downtown floodplain.
Okay, Mayor and Council, I'd like to give a little presentation on what's been happening with floodplain mapping with FEMA and particularly a section of Joliet and downtown area. In 2009, so we're talking about, about 8 years ago now, FEMA approached the city and the county, all the municipalities in the county, and indicated they were going to put together new floodplain maps, digitalized maps, which will be a very good thing when they are out in this capacity. Much easier to read, review. Scott Gapswich, one of our engineers, he does a lot of work in the floodplain work with us. He's looked at them already, Scott. I know he has, and he said they will be much easier to use once we get them out. When they came out, they sent the maps to us for review. All the municipalities, the county, everyone within Will County. We looked at them, and there was one big change in Joliet. Most of the Joliet area looked pretty consistent like it has been. Certain areas along the DuPage River, for example, there have been map amendments based on elevation, and some developers did some filling partially of the floodplain, but provided compensatory storage. That all showed up very well. The one area that changed, though, in Joliet is the downtown and I call it the south side of Joliet. The current maps are 1995 maps, and this is what is currently in effect right now as we speak, at this point still. And with those maps, none of the downtown nor the south side. And what I call the near south side is basically from the Des Plaines River on the west, down to Hickory Creek on the south, to the north-south elevated tracks towards Eastern Avenue on the east, and basically the elevated tracks going across the high-level bridge across the river here. Again, none of that area was in the floodplain. That's the current situation. Actually, they're putting them up on the you can see them on the screen right now. To the left is the current situation we have. The proposed maps when they came out, suddenly about 50% of our downtown, pretty much the north end of the downtown, has been added to the floodplain maps. About 75% of that area I just described, that south side of Joliet, has been put in the floodplain. And actually an area just east of downtown, again starting up around Scott Street and heading over to about Eastern Avenue till you get up a little higher elevation, and back down to Hickory Creek. We saw this, Scott and I reviewed it, Greg Ruddy, we reviewed it. We raised some cane, to say the least. We called in the FEMA folks. We had a meeting. This is back again. Now, this is like in the spring of 2009. We said, folks, what's going on here? Scott and I have both been here for quite a few years. This doesn't happen in Joliet. We explained to it. This does not happen. We just want to first meet with them and say, how could you add these areas? We talked about the 1996 event. And Again, we were all here. I've been here since '87. Scott's been here since '91. We experienced it. We were all over town. 1996, it was not the 100-year event. It was anywhere from 150 to a 200-year event. We still have never heard the final statistic on that. The 100-year event in Joliet's about 8.1 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. That event, depending on what part of Joliet we were in, was anywhere from about 9.5 inches to 11.5 inches in 24 hours. Again, we were here. Nothing happened in our downtown. Nothing happened on that south side. Bottom line is FEMA said, well, and we explained them. We said what goes on out here is the Des Plaines River is flood control based because of the lock and dam system. Army Corps of Engineers operates the lock and dam, Brandon Road lock and dam. It never goes up too high. There's numerous times it'll be, especially in the spring or parts of winter, Des Plaines River up north around, areas north of Des Plaines, Illinois, up towards this, Antioch and those areas. It'll flood. You'll hear about flooding around the far west side of Chicago. It's flooding. It comes into, I don't think it fluctuates more than about a 1.5 feet. We've never had a problem. Bottom line is, FEMA has said to us, and they're basically they're using Illinois State Water Survey as their consultant. They indicated that, well, the Corps they cannot guarantee that would work. The locking dam system would work. Well, we kind of rolled our eyes like, John Girl, I just thought you're doing this. Like us. We're doing the same thing. Believe me. So we said, guys, this is reality. This is what goes on here. And they said, well, and so I said, well, how would we get water in the downtown? They're not talking about a breach in the concrete walls. Those are massive walls that were put in the late 1920s, 1930s. That's not the case. They basically said is if the lock and dam system didn't work, water could potentially, with a 100-year event, could back up in the river, not go over the concrete walls, but could back up into the I&M Canal, the section it goes, it's about, I don't know, maybe 600-700 feet north of the Ruby Street Bridge. That's where the canal is again, and that heads up towards Lockport. It could back up in there, and there are some areas where it would overtop the I&M Canal banks and come in, back its way in through the old U.S. Steel property, the Forest Preserve property. Could come in like around Columbia and Scott and work its way and basically try to get back into the river system to get down to Hickory Creek. Hickory Creek's obviously lower than the Brand Road lock and dam. We get in, they're saying, get into Hickory Creek and then discharge back into outfall back into the Des Plaines River below the Brand Road lock and dam. So we said, well, again, we weren't necessarily buying it to say the least, but that's their stance, and they're the authority over it. So there was an appeal process. We start out back in late spring, and it was in June. We filed an official appeal. The first thing we did was we hired a consultant, Joseph Shute & Associates, to help us out initially. We wanted to see, we had them analyze how much water, if that situation happened, if the lock and dam system didn't work, if water backed up in the city that way, could our local storm sewer system absorb the water? Maybe it would flood the streets somewhat, a foot of water, but not get into buildings. Bottom line is, after a couple of years going back and forth with FEMA, again, appealing this, they basically said, we don't have enough capacity in our local storm sewer system to handle it. How much, we don't design a storm sewer system for 100-year events, obviously, but we thought maybe if not too much is coming out from the I&M, we might have capacity to handle like a 10-year event. Bottom line is, they said that the appeal was overruled. We then hired Rempe Sharp. A couple of the fellows are with us today. They'll be talking about something at the end here. And we hired them in 2013. Scott, am I right, Dave? 2013. And to, again, continue the appeal process. This time, we hired them to look at the modeling. What was the modeling the Illinois State Water Survey did? Make sure there's no errors in their modeling, with their data. We also had them look very closely at the elevations of the existing ground in that area I described north of Columbia. Again, old U.S. Steel property, basically towards east of the Des Plaines River. Look at the elevation of the I&M banks, things of that nature. Bottom line after that, and that went on for a couple of years too. They came out, the modeling seemed to be pretty accurate. Illinois State Water Survey did revise their modeling at one point, but we found out that Illinois State Water Survey, again, that's the technical group who's doing this work for FEMA, they agreed to a portion of what Rempe Sharp came up with. They agreed there's certain areas where the natural ground is high, the water couldn't come out that way, but there's still some openings in areas where there's some lower ground, areas where they thought it could potentially breach the existing I&M Canal earthen levees. And, again, we argued with them that this canal system was put in late 1830s, 1840. It's been here 150 years. I consider that natural ground at this point. But again, I think there's a lot of issues that have happened with hurricanes in the last 10 years or so, where people don't want to take certain responsibility, I suppose, as far as considering something a certified levee or not. You saw a lot of issues New Orleans had, for example, with levees and people getting sued over those areas. So, bottom line is, our last appeal, again, we've been digging our heels in. We fought this for the last 8 years. The last appeal, we don't have another technical appeal that we can come back with. So there actually just was recently, about a month ago, less than a month ago, at the Historic Museum, there was another open house. FEMA is starting the process to try to get these maps and become effective. They had to go through their whole open meeting and public meetings to let people comment either way. Again, all the affected communities, any resident that could come to these meetings. So they're starting that process. FEMA's goal now is, if everything goes smoothly, by January, probably 2019, about a year and a half, these maps could become effective. Long and short of it is, if they do become effective as it is, there'll be areas in the downtown and the south side that would, at this point, have to start getting flood insurance, or particularly if they go and sold and somebody tries to buy, you're going to have to get flood insurance. Those rates are going up substantially. I don't have a real good, I know typically what people would pay now, but they're going up. Those rates are going up. We've been told. Scott's been involved with that. They let Scott know. He's kind of our contact guy as far as floodplain in the city, and they're going up, tremendously also. So that's one thing that could potentially happen if we don't do anything else. Our consultant, Rempe Sharp, looked at another possibility, and just very preliminarily, and we're going to let them talk in a minute, but they've got an idea of what the city may be able to do. A project would basically involves creating some certified levees and some higher ground that would then keep that water, if it did back up, it would keep it from coming in through the downtown and the south side, and it would hold the water back basically until it had a chance to naturally drain down. This process, they'll talk about, they've got maybe some real rough preliminary costs for this work, but I'm going to have them give a little presentation next. But if that would be an option that we thought, and we talked to FEMA about this, State Water Survey, they gave us kind of a gentleman's agreement that if you were to do this, this would pretty much keep those areas you're objecting to and appealing to out of the floodplain. But it could be rather costly, and that's our current status. Like I said, we've been opposing this ever since we came out, and again, anybody who's been here any part of their life, they know what happens, doesn't happen. I know the mayor and I talked about this briefly, and so I talked about he was on duty the night before that big rain, and I can tell you he was out here amongst, I'm sure a lot of you folks were out here looking around. We didn't have problems from that big event, but unfortunately, that's some of the process you've got to go to when you're dealing with this agency.
Jim, I know you showed other maps that were more detailed than these. Are they available for the council to see?
Yeah, Scott, you've got some more detailed maps. Yeah, we could, if we wanted, he could show you those. Yeah, I mean, we don't have them on the screen. But we have paper copies.
Right.
If anyone would like, we could show them. We could bring them to your office if folks, the council want, and you guys want to see them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about in private, and we've been arguing with them. How does FEMA justify taking areas that have never flooded and now saying that they're in a flood zone?
Well, again, in our I don't know how other areas, but in our situation, they're basically justifying it by saying that the Army Corps of Engineers, in our case, who operates the lock and dam, is not going to guarantee that lock and dam system will be operational in Brandon Road the Brandon Road system, so that if it's closed, there is no way to let some of that excess water out. It could back up. That's how they're trying to, and that's what they've been telling us, even though we have had some heated arguments with them, to say the least. I've not been a
Any
nice
questions or
person in those
comments?
meetings.
Go ahead.
Well, it sounds like it's been a lengthy process, to say the
Yeah,
the
we've
least,
gone
Jim.
we've
Yeah.
been fighting for 8 years, like I said.
I guess my question is, you kind of touched on it a little bit, and you said these gentlemen here are going to give some sort of
They're gonna give a little
presentation
presentation,
on how to
yes.
mitigate, you know,
Yes,
the
how to possibly
problem.
mitigate it, yeah.
Assuming that's cost prohibitive, you know, since there's many businesses that are located in this area that you're talking about,
Yeah.
what does that do? I mean, are they going to have to go out and get floodplain insurance, or is there floodplain insurance? Maybe if they have a little floodplain insurance right now, it's certainly going to skyrocket.
Yeah, they probably don't. No, they'll have to most likely get insurance.
What,
Maybe if you guys can talk, I mean, when you come up in a minute, Jim and John here, but
so if we did nothing,
you have to get it right away, but I know if you sell the property, you have to get the insurance. Am I right, Scott, on that part we found out? Or John?
If you get a federally backed mortgage.
Okay. But just if it's currently, you currently own the property, you wouldn't necessarily have to get the insurance?
oh,
Is that right, John?
Depending on how your mortgage is written right now, it's still.
Okay. Okay.
okay. So it doesn't necessarily mean that those businesses would be affected
I mean, if
as
they
a
already
result
own the
of-
property and they paid off their mortgage, maybe it's an old business.
Right.
Turk Furniture or something.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just thinking of some old
Right.
people in town who have had it for generations.
Right.
May not, you know, if you don't have a mortgage, it may not affect you.
Okay.
If you have a mortgage, it'll definitely affect, because the lending company's going
Sure.
to want to make sure you have insurance.
They're going to require it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Jim, the housing authority that are building all those new apartment buildings or condos, whatever you want to call them, down there on Des Plaines by the wall,
Yes.
they don't have flood insurance right now. So they are a government agency. They're going to cost their own selves more money because they're going to have to get flood
We've-
insurance
we've
for all
informed-
that.
We've kept them abreast this whole time.
Correct.
What's going on, and, yeah, I mean, they understand,
It
I
has
don't
to
know if
be
they put them high
exorbitant
enough,
there.
Scott, do you know if they put those high enough? I'm not sure if they were able to, I don't think they could go high enough.
Part of it was to get them in early enough to avoid having to do some of the temp storage.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because again, right now, they're not in the floodplain. As of right now, in their building, they're not in the
No,
floodplain.
but they will be.
They, if
this
this
goes
goes into
through.
effect, they will, that area will be, yes.
So in the end, they're costing themselves money too. And I can't even imagine what that's going to cost for that whole area.
I don't know either. I'm not sure either, really.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, why don't we let
Well, I had a
Rempe
question.
Sharp, or go ahead, Larry.
In the areas that they're determined to add as floodplains, what level of risk, how do they categorize them, as low, moderate, or high risk?
Larry, I don't know, but I'm not sure about that. That's kind of more of it's insurance, and I'm not as familiar with that. I'm not going to lie
Jim,
to you.
you explained to me that they based their model on, was it 9 inches of rain in 1 hour or one
The
day?
100-year event is 8.1 inches in 24 hours, over a 24-hour consecutive time. That's the 100-year event in Joliet right now.
And that's what they based this new model on?
Yes. Yeah. But I guess, why don't I let Jim or John, who's going to do the presentation, talk, and then I'll be here if we have more questions for either one of the group. But I've got John Witt and Jim Bibby. They're both from Rempe Sharp and Associates. John, you want to talk? Okay. There's 2 other arrows, yeah. Krista's going to put those up, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is John Witt. I'm with Rempe Sharp Consulting Engineers in Geneva. I'm a licensed professional engineer in Illinois. And we should get some drawings up in just a second. But what we were looking at, we've been involved with this project for quite some time and trying to do battle with the various government entities and such. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have a little compromise. We did succeed to some degree in about 2013, where we did find some errors in some of the modeling they had done, and said, yes, that they did agree that things did need to be changed. And, it precluded, actually, the main problem is, okay, the source of the problem really stems between areas of low ground as they occur across some of the old U.S. Steel site and the Forest Preserve property, between Ruby Street and about 6,000 feet north to where the CN Railroad crosses on a diagonal. Through that area, it's about 6,000 feet. Through that entire length, there is a lot of high ground that qualifies for providing flood protection if it was continuous. The only problem is it's not. And in that 6,000 feet, we've identified, on a preliminary basis, and had some conversations with the State Water Survey and FEMA, that there's primarily 3 locations that have significant lengths below the base flood elevation, where if River waters, rose because of a 100-year flood condition in the river. It would breach in about 3 locations. Those locations run about 1,800 feet. About 3,600 feet. About 3,600 feet is what we would be looking at for correction. Also, there's some existing storm sewers that cross from the railroad tracks as they continue to the canal and provide low flow drainage. We have some issues we would have to correct with those as well, with check valves and such, where we could still maintain low flow drainage to the river during normal times. The check valve would shut and preclude water from backing up from the river into the area of the U.S. Steel and Forest Preserve site, and preclude it from continuing downstream then. So what we're looking at so far, it's kind of hard to tell on that drawing, almost very hard. You'll have to bear with me that the area north of Ruby Street to about 600 to 800 feet north as you get into the Forest Preserve property, there's some significant areas there that are below the base flood elevation. They're high enough ground now for normal times, but under flood condition, that water could overtop and continue downstream. As you continue northerly across the Forest Preserve property, there's another location where they have some of the old remnants of some of the old U.S. Steel foundations and such that are incorporated into the park. Some of those areas through there are a little bit low too that would need some remediation to raise the elevation. And continuing as you get just south of where the railroad tracks cross on a diagonal, another spot. So as I say, of the 6,000 or so feet between the 2 endpoints that are of concern, we have about 3,600 feet that need some help. We've looked at, in some instances, we can elevate some of the low ground, some of the potential breach areas with construction of some embankments, some earthen embankments. In some areas, more near the existing buildings just north of Ruby, there's some warehouse facilities, a printing facility, I believe, and some of the old U.S. Steel structures. Through there, because of the proximity of those buildings, the narrow proximity of room that we have to work, we'd be looking at constructing some concrete walls. Where we have room, we would put in earthen barriers instead. It'd be less costly. And where we can make them blend in, we can make them blend in. Again, where the old foundations are in the park area, in order to preserve the historic value of some of those old foundations, we would probably have a wall kind of meandering a little bit through there as well. We've worked with the State Water Survey. We've been working with FEMA, trying to come to a solution. As Jim was saying, we've met with them, and we're looking to get a nod, a wink, a buy-in that if you guys do this, you're heading in the right direction. And we think we have that. So what we're looking at doing is to mitigate the situation to preclude flood overflows from breaching in this 6,000-foot area and continuing downstream into the downtown area. We'd be looking at a combination of earthen levees and some concrete walls and such in that 6,000-foot stretch along the Forest Preserve property from Ruby up to the railroad crossing. Preliminarily, and please, understand this is very preliminary. We haven't done soil borings. There's limited analysis that's been done. Ballpark numbers we're looking at is probably $2 million plus to do that work. And then with the timing, in order to get this through the process with FEMA, to if we can't get it done before the maps change, to hopefully get it done just as they change, so that we can limit the amount of flood insurance exposure the downtown residents, downtown businesses would see with the institution of the new updated maps. So I don't know if that helped you at all. It was kind of the real short finale to where we've been for the last 8 years, though. So if there's anything to add on this side or questions to ask.
First for John.
So, but there's no guarantee that even if we spend the $2 million plus, that they're going to say yes to this.
Well, and to a degree. Now, we did meet with them, and we did, pass this idea by them. And, we got the nod that, yeah, if you do this and this and this, yeah, that looks like you'll be able to do what you're going to do. Now, there's a couple of steps in the map revision process. One is called a conditional letter of map revision, by which you put together the plans, you do the studies and such. You get all the calculations and say, here's what we're going to do, and by our calculations, this says this is going to work. FEMA will give you an approval. They'll give you a conditional approval, provided you build it the way you said you were going to build it. So what you want to do is get the conditional approval first before you put a shovel in the ground to, start, working towards that, $2 million plus budget. You can get a conditional assurance beforehand. And with that in hand, that gives you the, the level of comfort to move forward. And if you build it the way you said you were going to build it, then they would incorporate the letter of map revision change, which would ultimately get to our goal of reducing the flood insurance risk for the downtown residences and businesses. So it's not a shot in the dark. It's not a shot in the dark. It's a two-step process. And they give you, an assurance first, if you can prove it'll work, and then they give you the final change when you actually build it. Does that help at all? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So by the way, we won't be spending any money for construction until at least had that conditional letter of map, approval. In other words, we spend engineering money. If we were to go this route, we spend that up front, but we would not do any construction. We wouldn't go out even for bid until we had that PLOMAR, as we call it.
Questions, comments? Okay.
Yeah, I guess at this point, I want to make everybody aware of the situation. Again, we've been fighting this for 8 years already, and we have now run. I guess bottom line is I kept asking the city manager, the last two city managers, you want to bring it up? Let's wait. You guys are fighting. You guys are doing a good job. You're making some progress. Blah blah. Well, we did make a little at times, and we make some headway, then we take a couple steps backward. But I want to make everybody aware of what the situation is, and as a group, you can think about this or talk about this or what have you, but maybe we can bring it back to public service, the committee next, and do we want to then go forward with at least the design and see if we can get a conditional letter of map revision for this approach? I don't know about any other, again, between Jim and John, they've done a lot of flood control work in the past, and we said, is there anything else you can do short of doing this work? This is, very expensive, to say the least. Again, these guys can't think of much else, and particularly I was with the group when I was with them when they were with FEMA in the Illinois Water State Survey, when they kind of gave them the general nod that if you were to do this, this would most likely mitigate it and not put part of your downtown and part of your south side that was previously not in the floodplain in the floodplain. But again, I don't know if there are other options. So I guess at this point maybe we can come back to unless maybe with a different decision, we can go back to public service and think about this. And would you like us to go and take at this point? We've had these folks under contract for the technical appeal. That contract's not quite done. That's almost out. This would have to be a separate contract. It was more expensive. That was, I think, around a $60,000 contract roughly. This would be more money, obviously. But we would have to go out and get proposals from various people. Whether I'm sure this group would, Rumpy Sharp would also give us proposals, but we have to get proposals if we want to go forward, even with the engineering.
Can I ask another question? It may be a dumb one, but
Go ahead.
if we build the levees, like you're suggesting we may have to do, and you have this massive storm, which has never happened here, and the locks fail, which has never happened here, where does the water go? Does it flow over on the west side now because we got levees on the east side?
No, and that's part of the analysis as well, too, is in addition to doing some further modeling beyond what's been done before, we'd be looking at the I&M Canal and then also at part of the Des Plaines. Because the way the Des Plaines River is modeled right now is there's some anticipation that some of the water that goes down the Des Plaines River does get diverted, does go through downtown. When we institute the levee concept, that flow that per their models, went through the downtown area would continue down the Des Plaines River, we'd have to be able to prove, to demonstrate that any increase or change would be a de minimis increase, so that we're not causing an adverse impact to somebody else just to protect this other area. So that's all part of the equation.
So, to solve a problem that doesn't exist downtown, we may put the west side at risk.
I'm sorry.
We may put the west side at risk by creating a real problem in Des Plaines.
I don't think that's going to be likely with the volume of water we're talking about that is, could come down the canal, could conceivably get diverted by a breach. We're looking at, I believe the Des Plaines River is probably 35,000 cubic feet per second flow. Multiply that by 500 and you get gallons per minute. Offhand, I don't know what that is. The diverted flow over the breach would be about 1,000 cubic feet per second. A very modest amount that is going to then be retained in the Des Plaines River. With the size, the cross-section of the Des Plaines River, you might see some change, but I don't think you're going to see much. And that's part of the proof that we would have to go through to demonstrate that there's no significant increase to adversely affect somebody else.
And our motivation to do all this, to address the phantom problem, is only because of the financial burden on the residents for those this is our motivation, right? So we really need to know a little bit more detail on the map on whether it's low, moderate, high risk. And then something else that can be addressed at that point, which would be apologies.
Yeah, that Illinois State Water Survey, Scott's been working with them, and they have been going in and looking at some of the properties Scott gave them, right? And they were supposed to, they haven't given it to us yet, but they were going to give us an idea of what folks may pay for flood insurance, floodplain insurance, and we have not gotten that yet. And what the risk assessment, Scott? Okay. So we're still waiting to get that data back. And that may be another thing we want to wait a little bit to get that before we go forward.
And something to look at is the effect on those in the purported proximity, according to the Army Corps and FEMA. And if they're going to pay $350 to as much as a couple, 2,000-3,000 a year, depending on the level of risk that's assigned, an SSA could apply to that too, because they're benefiting by not paying $1,500 a year for the next 30 years. They're saving. Again, I'm not a savant either, and if you throw toothpicks on the floor, I can't count them. But what's 15 times 30 years? 1,500 times 30 years, Mr. Accountant?
Yeah, it's a lot.
So you could work in an SSA, but that's not really for the engineering department. That's policy. So I just wanted to put it out there, though, because you spend a little up front, and you save a lot over 30 years.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Next, we have an update on the artificial turf for Slammer Stadium.
Council members, thank you for having me here tonight. A little change of pace from flood control, hopefully. I've prepared a very brief presentation just to talk about some of the plans that we have to do in the stadium with the installation of artificial turf. And we're really talking at a very high level about two broad themes. First is to bring more entertainment options to the citizens of Joliet and of Will County and the surrounding areas. But second is to capture what we believe is a real economic development opportunity for downtown and for the city. And I'll share a few statistics about both of those. We really look at new events in three areas. First is significantly expanding in amateur baseball and softball. Number two is expanding our ability to house other sports, like soccer, like rugby, like lacrosse. And that's part of the design idea. And then third would be to add additional community-oriented events. And so I'm just going to talk very briefly about each of these, and then I'll open it up for questions, because I don't want to keep you guys too long. Let's see if I can work this. Hey. So, first, amateur baseball and softball. We've talked a lot about this notion of the sports tourism industry. I pulled a statistic from one county, Palm Beach County in Florida. Maybe they got a little bit better weather than us. But I want to talk about what they do in amateur baseball. 2017, they just actually put a business plan together for amateur baseball because it's that big a deal. They're expecting 14,000 players to come in and play in various tournaments across the county. They're expecting a $10 million annual impact from hotel rooms, restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. It's a real big deal. And I'm not suggesting that we're going to, create $10 million of economic activity year one, but I do think that this is a prize that we can go for. We're going to start by expanding our own amateur baseball. Last year, we hosted our first tournament. It was a huge success. This year, we have 2 tournaments. They sold out like that, 18 teams. And next year, we're going to target 10 travel baseball tournaments. These are age-specific boys baseball. And we're going to run them from April through July. We expect 100 to 120 teams. Some of that number is going to be contingent upon whether we can actually potentially play some games, for example, at Joliet Central. Based on what other teams in our league and the Frontier League have done, we could estimate at least 25% of those teams are going to be coming from out of town. And we think next year alone, we can get 750 incremental room nights of hotels, and then with all the other resultant spending. So this opportunity is real, and we're going to start by focusing on the business that we understand most, which is baseball. But there's a longer-term opportunity. I think everybody believes that, for example, having the IHSA in Joliet's a good deal. There are a ton of IHSA-like events that we could actually bring to this town. And I picked one example. Prince George County. 38,000 people live in this town, or in this county, I guess. It's a pretty sparsely populated one. But they focused on bringing big events to their area. And they hosted this past year the 2016 American Softball Association 14 and under Class A Girls Eastern Championship. So this is like one little tiny slice of the softball world. Their numbers from this one event, over 1,000 hotel rooms, nearly $1 million in economic impact. And we think we can do that. We think we can create over time, or attract over time, more and more of these kinds of marquee events that will be bringing in people from all across the country. I want to be clear that our stadium would be the centerpiece of this, but we would need cooperation, because the bigger the event, the more fields you need, for example, for preliminary rounds and things of that sort. So I don't want to oversell this thing, but I hope you understand that in amateur baseball and softball all by themselves, there's a huge opportunity for us. Soccer is another thing, and other sports are other things we are planning to configure the stadium to do. If you're putting in a baseball field, that's 95% of the cost of making it a multi-sport field. So in the design, we're going to be working to make it easy to put goalposts in, make sure that we've got the larger footprint required for soccer or rugby or any of those sports. We're in the process of developing a plan on this area. We really, in 2018, want to focus on the baseball, softball opportunity to start. But we're going to build a plan to attract high school teams, college teams, and amateur soccer teams to play in our facility. We also have an option to bring in a minor league soccer team. There's 2 different leagues that are essentially the 3rd division, so they're sort of like the AA baseball equivalent, that could play in our facility as well, and we're going to look at that opportunity. And the same tournament opportunity that exists in the baseball and softball world exists in the soccer world too. So we actually think we've got 2 bites at the proverbial apple by looking at other sports like soccer. And then finally, there's a lot of other things that we can do and are planning to do in the years ahead. Things like concerts, things like hosting road races. You see an example here from the Fort Myers Miracle, which is a minor league team in Florida, and they have a big beer fest. We're actually going to do a smaller version of that as part of our All-Star Game week this year. So again, it's a lot of different events that we could bring into this facility, because we'll have a playing surface that you can use way more than you can use a grass field that we have today, plain and simple.
I think you got a great market around here for a beer fest, I can tell you that.
I'm going to be front of the line.
Okay.
So, as I said, I wanted to keep it short and sweet and then answer any questions anyone has, but we're very excited about the opportunity to bring more activities to Joliet and expand the number of things we can do in the park. It's a beautiful park, and it's a great place to be when we've got ball games, but, you know, the nature of our baseball, the nature of that playing surface means that it's not being used more often than it is being used. And we're very excited about the economic side of this, because we think it really is something that can put a lot of money back into the community. And I just wanted to end with the thought that we also know we can't do this by ourselves. So we've already started, for example, talking to organizations like the Rialto. We know a lot about baseball. We've got an eclectic music selection, but I don't know much about putting concerts on. So we need people like the Rialto. We need people like the City Center Partnership. We need people like the Heritage Corridor Convention and Visitors Bureau. We need people like the schools in terms of other facilities if we go for these really big things. So I just wanted to maybe put that also on the table. We hope to be, you know, in the middle of this hub of activity, but we know we just can't do it all by ourselves.
Mayor?
Yep.
I know some years back when we talked about artificial turf, there was an issue about the mound. And I know that we discussed at committee level, at the baseball committee, that that was one of my concerns, moving the mound. And you said since then they are new and improved. So you want to explain that to the council?
Yes. So,
Please.
if you maybe not obviously, but if you kept a traditional dirt pitching mound and then wanted to play soccer, you would have to dig it up, rebuild it, very time-intensive process. So there was a first generation of an artificial turf mound, was still a little bit problematic because basically you still have this large mound broken up into 3 pieces. But now there's a next generation mound, and don't quote me on it, I think it comes into 6 different pieces. You can assemble it and disassemble it in about 20 minutes. And so we're also going to take advantage of those kinds of technologies so that we can switch things over quickly. Because part of the key to getting utilization is being able to go from event to event to event, to play, for example, amateur baseball on Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon while we have a home game on Saturday night. So we're very excited about being able to look at those options.
And did we look at any other place that might have that at this point?
We've
Portable
got a
mound?
list of people, right? We're waiting for the engineering firm to get moving, and then we're going to get the data from those people to make sure we know the best options for us.
Thanks, Nick.
You're welcome.
Nick, how many teams in the conference have artificial turf today?
9 out of 12? 9 out of 12 today.
And can I assume all of them have business plans similar to what you're proposing to us on their off days?
Directionally, yes, but some of them are actually way ahead of us. So, for example, the team in Sauget, Illinois, outside of St. Louis, they are, and I haven't seen it yet, but I've spoken to their owner, they're in the process of building those additional fields right around their ballpark so they can bring in these, 30-team, 40-team tournaments. They play the preliminary games out there, and then as you succeed, you get to play in the big ballpark. The numbers we cited there about our 2018 agenda, we basically is copying what they do in Florence, Kentucky, at the Florence Freedom. So yeah, everybody that knows what they're doing is heading in this direction. Windy City, the team in Crestwood, installed artificial turf now 2 seasons ago, and their amateur business has gone through the roof.
If Mr. Trisna doesn't get it handled, we will have a lot of floodplain, we could have baseball fields.
Well, Mr. Trisna promised us better drainage with this installation, so I'm hoping we're covered either way.
And looking down the road, like you said, you would start out with a softball, baseball approach up front, but hoping to market to soccer, which I think is a huge following. I believe Joliet Central, Joliet West, even the Plainfield schools have great soccer teams. So would these be permanent markings on the field, or would you treat the artificial and chalk it, as they say?
So there will be, if you think about the biggest thing that's going to delineate the field is going to be warning tracks, foul lines. So it's going to be laid out as a baseball field. And then we would have temporary markings for soccer or whatever sport we played. Personally, I hate those fields where there's more lines everywhere. You don't really know what the heck's going on. So we're going to keep it clean for baseball, and then if, for soccer, we'll have, part of it will be that we'll actually design it so that one of the foul lines is going to be one of the sidelines. It may be that the end line is going to be part of the other foul line. So in some of the conversations we've already had, we're going to try to incorporate those things in there. But then, for example, the far line that would go from first base out into left center, that's going to be chalked. And there's specific kinds of things that you can put it on and if you need to, wash it off pretty quickly.
Well, and as a personal preference, I would agree. That's why I was trying to imagine my mind is it's going to look like a checkerboard when we're playing baseball, and I'm glad to hear that that's not I mean, I ref football, right? I've been on those fields, and it's very embarrassing when you have a 3-yard mark for the extra point, and I don't know what that 2-yard mark is for soccer. I've never finished it out, but there's a little tiny white spot, and you bend over, you set it up, and everybody gets ready, and then you have to, so I'm in agreement with you. I don't like those multi-marked fields. I like the chalking instead, and keeping it, like you said, pure for the baseball.
Exactly.
And I would say this, that those of us that are old enough to remember the disco night at Sox Park, okay, that kind of killed multi-events at Sox Park for a lot of years. There's things that you've brought up that you intend to do, but once that field's in there, there's things that are going to be coming up. I mean, it's just more multi-use, yeah. It's just more, because people have to remember that if you tear up the field, somebody's got to pay to put that grass back. And then, if you're in the playoffs in your league and it's torn up too bad, they could actually say, we're not playing on your field. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So, and I believe this is going to be really funded over a 10-year period from the TIF and the SSA, and that's great because that's going to bring these bodies to the businesses that are in the TIF and the SSA. So, thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome. Just one other thing that we can talk a lot about the future. Just want to remind everybody, opening days tomorrow.
Well, we got a couple more questions.
Oh, sorry.
Just pretty much of a comment. When we look at how excited we could get about the opportunities of bringing more events in and that economic impact that it'll have on the city, I think that this is a good direction to be looking toward, and especially expanding those community-based events that we can bring more and more and get more and more people involved. Means more and more dollars.
I agree.
Get to thinking about that. Thank you for the presentation.
And I'll just say, a little bit to Pat's point, if anybody wants to understand about this market, just Google sports tourism, baseball, and what you'll see are the specific communities that say, look, we're all in. I found a thing today from Springfield, Missouri, and they were talking about, they had events you could not even conceive of. They had the Christian homeschooled boys baseball tournament. And they were talking about all these families that have Christian homeschooled boys that were coming to Springfield, Missouri for this tournament. It's crazy.
It's going to be an exciting piece.
Now, when you get these tournaments together and stuff, will you be sending out a package like to each team, promoting like the businesses in the town and telling them where they can go, where they can stay?
We typically, so again, I mentioned Florence.
'Cause I used to coach travel softball, and we would go to towns and we would basically be looking on our own to find stuff.
Now, we want to make it easy. We want to help people understand where they can stay. So typically, when you're putting one of these tournaments on, you actually have a list of preferred hotels. You've pre-negotiated rates with them. What are the restaurants? What are some other activities, right? The kids might have a day off or like an afternoon off. What do they do? So yeah, we plan on packaging that all together so that a family can come in. They're excited about coming in. They're excited about playing in the venue that we have, but they're also excited about what they can do when they're not playing. So yes, we think that's a critical piece of the equation.
Okay. Yeah, the field turf, we played on it in Indianapolis, and it rained for like 4 hours, and we were playing 30 minutes later.
Nick, on a different note, I read where your foundation has a goal of $50,000, and Heather's going to shave her head if it doesn't get there. Are you part of that shaving program?
I volunteered, but I am not I'm not personally volunteered, but maybe we'll set a higher target. We have to raise 50, so it's not if we don't get there. We have to put money in. So those of you who are interested in Ms. Mills without her hairdo, there's a GoFundMe page, and it's all the proceeds benefit the Anthony Rizzo Children's Cancer Foundation. So I might, Pat, if you and I sign up together, I might be more inclined to.
I don't have that much hair, so.
Say, he's halfway there.
I'm losing it too.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, thank
If you
you.
could sign up.
You were going
Do it.
About the opening day. You wanted to-
Next is citizens to be heard on agenda items. Is there anyone present that would like to speak on an agenda item this evening? Seeing none, we'll pass it over to the interim city manager to discuss tomorrow night's agenda items.
Okay, I'm going to run through the agenda for tomorrow. There are 4 proclamations. Under presentations for tomorrow, the new Rialto Director, Valerie Devine, will be introduced, along with a Rialto Square update. Council committee reports, the Economic Development Committee, Finance Committee, and Public Service Committee will provide their reports. There are 4 items on the consent agenda: the approval of minutes, invoices paid report, and then the 2 payroll reports, one for March 17th to March 30th, and March 31 to April 13th. License and permit applications, I'm going to turn it over to the Deputy Liquor Commissioner to address the 5 items under license and permit applications.
Mayor, City Council. First is Council Member 25517. A public hearing was held on April 5th, 2017 at 9 a.m. for a request for a new e-license. The applicant is Husaka Group Incorporated, DBA El Boro de Oro. The location is 925 Plainfield Road. No persons appeared in opposition. There's no outstanding monies owed to the city. The building department will approve on completion of the renovations, and the police and fire have no issues. Based on the facts and the facts of the hearing, Liquor Commission is recommending approval. Go ahead.
Hours for that facility?
It's a restaurant, I believe, to start.
From 9 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Say that again.
9 to 11.
9 to
he said.
11?
9 a.m. to 11 p.m.
And what are the hours today there?
What are the hours now?
9 to 8.
Chris, what's his name?
Thank you.
Council Memo 256-17. A public hearing was held on April 5th, 2017 at 9:30 a.m. for a request for a transfer of a B license. The applicant is Karen Almaje, DBA Crybabies Tap. The location is 435 East Jackson. No person appeared in opposition. There's no outstanding monies owed to the city. Building department will approve on completion of renovations. Police and fire have no further issues. Based on the facts and the facts of the hearing, Liquor Commissioner is recommending approval.
Mayor?
Yes.
Jim, is this a sale, or is it?
Just a transfer of license, yes, I believe it's a sale.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Next is Council Member 257-17. A public hearing was held on April 5th, 2017 at 10 a.m. for a request of Class E license. The applicant is Pappas Wild Horse LLC, DBA Wild Horse. The location is 2314 West Jefferson Street. There's no persons appeared in oppositions. There are no outstanding monies owed to the city. The building department will approve on completion of renovations. The police department would like the location closely monitored. Based on the applicant's other liquor license at 1609 West Jefferson, which is Long Shots, has had several calls for servants for disturbances, loud noise, battery, drug activity, and burglar alarms. Fire department has no issues. Based on the facts and the facts of the hearing, Liquor Commission is recommending approval.
Why?
What's that?
Why, if it's been a problem?
They haven't been a problem. It's another location that's
It's
been
a
a
new
problem.
location.
But I mean, if there are if they had problems at the other place, aren't they setting themselves up for problems at this place?
I can't foresee the future, but the police just said they wanted it closely monitored.
Isn't this a restaurant also?
It's a restaurant as well.
Or the
not a
other
bar.
one's just
Yeah.
basically a bar?
The other one's just basically a bar. This one's just going to be a restaurant, correct?
Okay.
Yes.
No, he answered it. Thanks, Jim.
Next is Council Member 258-17. A public hearing was held on April 5th, 2017 at 10:30 a.m. for a request of a Class A1, which is a brew pub, new license. The applicant is Migraine Brewing Company LLC, DBA Migraine Brewing Company. Location is 50 East Jefferson Street, Suite 106. No persons appeared in opposition. There is no money owed to the city. The building department will approve after renovations are complete. The fire department and police department have no issues. Based on the facts and the facts of the hearing, Liquor Commission is recommending approval. Last is Council Member 259-17. A public hearing was held on April 5th, 2017 at 9:05 a.m. for request of a Class B transfer from WCM EAA. The applicant is Venue Works of Joliet, DBA, the Rialto Square Theater. The location is 102 North Chicago Street. No persons appeared in opposition. There's no outstanding money owed to the city. The building department has approved. The police and fire have no issues. Based on the facts and the facts of the hearing, Liquor Commissioner is recommending approval.
Questions? Yes.
I had a question, if the migraine gentleman could come up? First of all, obviously, you guys have done a lot of work in putting this business together, and the city has through Steve Jones' economic development. So I just want to give you an opportunity. We talked briefly when you came in here tonight. What's your target date for opening so people can see if they're watching?
Sure, we're looking at the middle of July. We haven't set an exact date yet because we still have a lot of things to figure out with the leak situations that we have and making sure that we get that all squared away. But we're pretty dead set on the middle of July.
And for those doubters out there, what was the exciting thing that got delivered today?
We got our tanks today. Exciting, super exciting day. So.
Okay, that's all. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to let people know that you're almost there.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks, all.
Okay, public hearings. There's one public hearing tomorrow, Council Memo 261-17, approving the annexation of 4 acres located at 2121 South Chicago Street. There's a staff recommendation to table the matter to June 20th, 2017. Staff, just to give you a quick update on this one, staff and legal are continuing to work with the developer and their attorney on the project. For your information, the property in question is located on the southwest corner of Emerald Drive and Route 53. Under ordinances and resolutions, Council Memo 263-17, ordinance approving a reclassification of 1226 Plainfield Road from R2 single family to B1. Staff recommends tabling this to June 6th in order to provide time to conduct a neighborhood meeting. For your information, the neighborhood meeting is scheduled for May 18th at 5:30 here in the council chambers. Council Memo 264-17, just so you're clear, there are 2 items on this one. It's an ordinance approving / a resolution denying a special use permit to allow the addition of a 4th dwelling unit, efficiency apartment located at 711 East Jackson Street. So in this particular case, staff is recommending that the council pass the resolution denying the special use permit. The request to add a 4th unit cannot be supported due to the fact that work to add the additional unit was started without a permit, and furthermore, there is no history of the building having 4 residential units. The next one, Council Memo 265-17, ordinance approving a special use permit to allow construction of a 65-foot high wireless communication monopole and related equipment located at 15 Osgood Street for T-Mobile and other future wireless communication providers. And second, a resolution authorizing execution of a lease agreement with EchoSite LLC, a Delaware limited liability company. So just so you clear on this one, there are 2 action items. An ordinance approving the special use permit to allow construction of the 65-foot high wireless communication monopole. And second, because this is city property, it's a resolution authorizing execution of a lease agreement with EchoSite. So again, this is a city-owned lot. It's 15 Osgood, and just to summarize very briefly on what the terms are of the lease, it's $18,000 a year with an annual increase of 2%. Regarding the schedule, they are forecasting construction, if everything goes well tomorrow, construction to start on 6/27 of 17, wrapping up by 7/17 of 17. And if you do have any questions for EchoSite, the representative will be flying in from Kansas City tomorrow to attend the meeting.
Mayor?
Yes.
Now, this is on city property, you said, Mayor?
Yes, this is city property.
So we'll be getting typically people get that monthly rent?
Yes, it's $18,000 a year.
Okay.
Mayor.
Yes.
So Marty, was the residents in that area notified?
There was a hearing and there was no objection.
Someone showed up or?
I don't even know if anyone, I'd have
But
to.
there's no objection?
Kendall, do you know offhand if anyone showed up at the meeting?
Sorry, Mayor and Council. There was one person that showed up with comments. It's in the report. I forget the gentleman's name. He owns property on the other side of the rail viaduct. His concern was that there be design that would not allow illegal dumping on that site. He was also curious as to how these monopoles are sited. He thought that maybe the city was seeking these locations, and we basically replied that they have companies that actually do all of that work for them. We don't actively seek sites for these towers, but there was no other public comment. There were no other residents that were at the meeting to object.
Thank you.
And then as a follow-up, there will be fencing around the property to hopefully prevent any illegal dumping, so. Under resolutions, resolution authorizing acquisition of 809 Adler Street. This is for the continued acquisition of property for the expansion of the East Side Treatment Plant. Next resolution, Council Memo 270-17, a resolution authorizing membership in the Lower Des Plaines Watershed Group. The resolution authorizes membership in the Lower Des Plaines Watershed Group, which consists of 30 entities. The council memo highlights some of the benefits of membership. And I do want to mention that there was an item on the agenda last time that was actually continued or tabled to this meeting. Recall it was the ordinance amending Ordinance 16-569, which established salary ranges and fringe benefits for employees. So after taking a second look at this, it was recommended to restate entirely Ordinance 16569 rather than have those two little paragraphs in the ordinance itself. We thought it would cause less confusion moving forward because this ordinance has already been amended a number of different times. So to make it clear for everyone, we wanted to restate the entire ordinance rather than just a piece of it. So as soon as staff puts this, all the other amendments together into one formal document, it'll appear before council again. So hopefully that'll be sooner rather than later. Under bids and contracts, the items were reviewed earlier this evening by Public Service Committee, who will report on any issues during their committee report tomorrow. And for tomorrow, there is a request for executive session. And then just in closing, I know my daughter's listening, and it is her birthday today. So happy birthday. And that's all I have.
Next, we have public comments.
Good afternoon, good evening, council members. How you all doing? Yes, I did start building a wall at 7-Eleven, and then realizing that I was doing wrong. Being a city council, I know the rules, I know the laws. And then I came and applied for electrical and plumbing, and I was called that I could not add another unit to that building, which is pretty good size. There's a huge garage not being used other than small items, junk that can need to be thrown away. And I was denied the permit for the electrical and the plumbing. So I went ahead and filled out, somebody left. Anyway, I know that I started it wrong. The reason I need the approval of the city council for an extra unit is because of the flood insurance going up $200. I've never had no problems whatsoever in that building or none of my properties with police, problems of whatsoever of any kind, no complaints from the neighborhood or anything. The flood insurance went up $200, which Mr. Kendall Jackson read the letter. And I think Mr. Dave Mackley and some other gentleman from the building department read that letter. Now, I got 4 buildings there. You can add them up, $200 a piece. My rent is very low. I cannot afford to raise it because they're all working small jobs. But I got good tenants. They pay on time. I've never had no problems. That's why I need that extra unit for the payments, that mortgage, because the banks, they collect flood insurance, but where's that money going to when it's never used? It's a good scam going on. It should be to where that if you owe the property, it should be up to you to have insurance in case of a flood, not being forced on you. And that's what the banks do in order to get a loan. I got 4 properties again, and it went up $200 a piece. I cannot deal with that anymore. That's why I need that 1 unit. And it's gonna be for 1 single person. It's not gonna be for a family. I'm asking the support of the city council to please approve it. I know that it went to the zoning board, and there was only 4 people that showed up. 3 voted for it, 1 was denied. I wish that all 8 members or 7 members on that zoning board should have showed up, but only 4 showed up at that time. Then again, I'm asking the council to take it into consideration. I need that extra unit, and it's only for 1 person. I got ample parking. Parking will be no problem for that. And I'm going as far as blacktopping a certain area for that. For that, thank you for listening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Marty, tomorrow, can you make sure staff will be able to justify why they're saying no? Will they be present for that?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Next is Bob Hacker.
Good evening. First, I'd like to congratulate the council of victors that just got through the election. I know winning is the best thing in life. When I'm here tonight, I've got 2 options that I'd like to throw out to the council to take a look at. I've been reading about what to do with the old prison on Collins Street. I don't think the state will ever come back and give you money to fix it up. As you can see what they've let it go in such despair as it is right now. It's only going to become a bigger eyesore as it's falling down now. My first option is that I've been told that some of the best gravel, stone, in this county is beneath that site. The city could open up and put out to bid to mining contractors to buy the rights to mine that stone. I think that would bring a very big revenue to the city. Also, then you would negotiate a royalty on every ton of stone taken out of there, so that could go on for years. And the third thing that you would do is scrap all the iron and steel in there and get the money for that, because I understand there's quite a bit of it in there with all the cells. The fact that there's walls all around this building or this site would hide this from the public of what they're doing in there. And I understand mining now is done underground. It's not done like it used to be. But I think that the city would not have to put out a penny because the contractor would have to furnish his own equipment. There's 3 types of revenue I think that would come in on this, and I think it's something you might want to take a look at. The second option is really, if you want to get rid of the site, I watched the contractor down at the river, the edge down in Des Plaines Street, and they ground up all the concrete and stone in that site and then reused it for the building of those homes. The city could put out the bid for a contractor to come in and grind up all the walls and buildings and sell that stone. And again, they would have to pay a hefty fee to get that right. The city would get a royalty on every ton of the gravel that goes out of there. And the third thing is, again, you'd get the money for the steel and scrap iron. One thing that has always bothered me in the city, to hear Joliet called the prison city. And Stateville is no longer in the city. If we did take that process and got rid of it, I think that would be open up a acreage of property that would be zoned industrial. You could sell it and then put it back on the tax rolls. But getting back to the prison city, I would rather see the city called the City of Champions than the prison city. But there's always going to be a need for gravel. There's going to be bidders out there that will take this on. I'm sure there'll be quite a bit of gravel used on Barrow to Kirk's Bridge to Hobo. And I think that this has taken a bad situation and you could make money on it with the city not have to do any outlay with it. So I just wanted to throw that out to you for you to take a look at. If you decide to do something, I'd be more than happy to sit down and show you some of the ideas I have otherwise. And if you don't, nothing lost. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak under public comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
So motion is seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.